I'm in the salary data workbook here where we have just various data from a company. So we'll say that this is from a consulting firm. So I want to take a look at this data. I'm going to put filters on it by going up to the filters, and this will allow me to see if I have null values, which I have blanks here, and okay. This will also allow me to take a look at my categories and see if it's messy. In this case, we have both bachelor's and bachelor's degree. These are really the same level of education, so this data is a little bit messy. Whoever did the data entry entered it two different ways. Also the same thing with master's. Now Excel is not case sensitive, but there is one value in here with a lowercase p for PhD. When we get into Python, we do have to clean that, but here in Excel, we don't have to worry about it. So one way that you can clean these out is, for example, if we want to do a regression based on years of experience, so we definitely want to remove the blanks because we can't do math with a blank. So I'm going to select only the blanks here, and it looks like we only have one, so I could just delete this row. I would go through that to clean up everything in this table. For the purposes of this exercise, I've done it already. So over here I have the clean data. So it's this data set, but I just cleaned it up a little bit. I also removed the job title column because we're not going to be using that to predict salary. And I also removed the oh no, that's all I removed for now. Okay, so at this point, I'm thinking I'm doing a regression. I want to do a correlation so I can check to see if there is a linear relationship to begin with between these variables. And we have salary, age, and years of experience. Our education level column is still messy for now, but if we did a correlation matrix, which we would do by going to the Data tab and the Data Analysis Toolpack. If you don't have the Data Analysis Toolpack, then you would have to enable that by going to Options and then Add-ins, and then in here we have the Analysis Toolpack. So I already have it, so I will click to open that, and where I want to go for this is correlation. Select OK, and then we need our range here. So we are going to select all of these numerical columns, salary, age, and years of experience. We're going to select all the data, so the keyboard shortcut for that is Control-Shift-Down arrow, and that allows us to select the whole range, because if I were scrolling down, it would take quite some time for me to get to over 6,000 rows. I do have labels in my first row, and I would put this in a new worksheet, which I'll call Corel 2 since I already have one called Corel. And I would get this. And so it's the same data here. So because I showed that process, I'll just delete this tab and get rid of it. And we'll go back over here. So what I want to look at here is I want to see, first of all, if there is a linear relationship between salary and age and salary and years of experience, which there is quite a strong linear relationship between both of these values and salary. However, the issue arises because both age and years of experience are super highly correlated with each other. And this makes sense because it takes years of age in order to get years of experience. So because they're so highly correlated with each other as x variables, that would cause some issues in our regression with multi-collinearity. So we're not going to use age. We're going to use years of experience. It is more highly correlated with salary than age is, but it's also just logically it makes sense that this applies to work, salary applies to work, age doesn't necessarily apply to work. There are many people that grow old and never work. There's other people that work for a very long time. All right, so now I'm going to move over to this gender category, or gender tab rather, and we're going to show how we make some dummy variables. And so I did a regression on both male and female, which I'll show that they are actually the same model. We have the same R square value, we have the same observation. Everything's the same, but we notice that the female and the male, they're the same but opposite signs. So we have negative about 5,000 here and positive about 5,000 there. And what this is basically describing to us is a gender gap here for salary. So the males are making this much more when we've controlled for years of experience. So supposing you're female, if I highlight both of these, then my summary bar down here gives me a sum of $62,500. So that would be the salary if I were female. So if I highlight these, I get the same value. So my intercept, years of experience, and coefficient are a little bit different, but it's the same model from a different perspective. So in we're going to code these as ones and zeros, so that way Excel can make a regression model based on numerical data, since it can't use words like male and female. So what I'm going to do is in my label here, I'm going to put male, and then I'll go down to the next cell and I'll type an equal sign, and I'm going to use an if formula so that I can use logic, so that if this is a male, then it will get a value of 1, and if it's a female, it will get a value of 2. So I type if and then tab, which puts me in the formula. So I now have a logical test. So if A3 is equal to E2, and I'm going to press F4 to make this an absolute reference, so that way I can lock it down and fill down. So if they're equal, so if it's male in this case, then comma to take me to the next argument. The value if true will be 1 and the value if false will be 0. And I can press enter, and then I can double click on the fill handle and it will fill down all the other rows for us. So now we have a dummy variable that indicates if someone is male or not. So this allows us to make this regression output. So if I go back to the data tab, data analysis, this time I would select regression. Our Y range is salary. And then our X range. In Excel, our X variables must be adjacent to each other, so I already have them set up that way. But if you don't have yours set up that way, then that would be required first. So I'm going to do the same thing, selecting 2 X variables this time, and again that keyboard shortcut to select all the way to the bottom of your data range is Control Shift and the down arrow on your keyboard. Again, I have labels, and let's put it on a new worksheet tab, and we will call this one Gender 2, just so I can show that we are getting the same model. So I can see that these are the same coefficients from before. We have some good significance on our p-values. Our r-square is the same. This is the same exact model as this first one here that I have set up based upon male. So because I use this cell reference, I could actually change the coding on this easily by just changing the title. So now females are coded as 1, and then I could use the same setup to create this summary output down here. All right, I'm going to delete this Gender 2 tab because we don't need it. And so this brings us to the education level, which is for the homework where I want you to build out. So the first thing here is we're going to copy and paste this data set here. So I'm going to take columns A through E and press Control C to copy. And then I can go over here and I want to paste them, but I want to value paste, because if I just paste with Control V, actually it worked, but it might give you an error. On some versions of Excel it did give an error, so I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to click in here to value paste. So if I paste values, instead of getting the formula, I just get the zeros and ones, and I have this time from a female perspective, where male is the reference group in this case, and female is coded as 1. So we want to build out the education level. And as we recall, we had instances where we had 2 different bachelor's degree and 2 different master degree entries, but really we know, because we're human beings, that they're the same, but the computer is reading this as 2 different values, so we have to clean this up. You can, another way to check, so I showed you the filters, is to use the unique function. So if I use the unique function and give this an array, and press enter, it spills out and it tells me all of the values here. So now I can know what I have to clean up. I know exactly which characters they are, whether they're uppercase or lowercase or have apostrophes or whatever the case is. I can see them all right here. And the easiest way to clean up in this data set would be to do a find and replace. So if I go to the Home tab on the ribbon and click on Find and Select and then Replace, I can find, I want to find bachelor's degree, and let's just replace it with bachelor's, and then that way it will match the other one on here. So I have it within this sheet, and we don't have formulas. So okay, so we'll click Replace All. They made 2,265 replacements, and I can see that my list got cleaned up here. Actually, it looks like there's 2. Oh, I made an error on the spelling. I'm going to undo that and do it again. I must have put a little, I think I fat fingered something. There we go. Bachelor, oh, bachelor's. All right, let's replace all. Okay, now I can see that my unique list here has gone down by 1. So that was kind of a good error to make on an explanation video, because it just shows how the unique function is so helpful. So let's do it again for masters. And replace all. Perfect. Now we have 4 distinct education levels for the highest education level. So you can think of this data set as being maybe an export from a human resources software. Okay, so now we have education level cleaned up. I can delete the unique function, and what we're going to want here is one of our education levels would be the reference group, and we're going to select high school to be the reference group, so we're not going to code for that. So we're going to code for bachelor's, master's, and PhD. And I'm keeping them in the same spelling as what it is in the education level, because that way we can just use a simple if formula for the logic. So if B3 equals, sorry, not G2, if it equals F2, press F4 to add the dollar signs to make it an absolute reference, comma to move to the value if true argument, 1, and then a comma to move to the value if false argument, which will be 0. Now we have bachelor's, a value of 1. We can take that down, and then it looks like we have 3,021 records here that have a bachelor's degree. So looks pretty good. We'll do the same thing with master's. So I'm going to this time just drag the formula over, and I'm going to change this because it wasn't absolute, so I have to change that back, and then this one will be G2, and then I'll G2, and I'll make it an absolute reference here, and then fill it down. And now we can see we have a master's degree here, we have a master's degree here, it's coded as 1. PhD isn't on there at all yet, and let's do PhD. So at this time I'll type it out again. So if, sorry, not A3, if B3 equals H2, lock it down, true is 1, false is 0, fill down the column. So now we have dummy variables for female, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. Now we can run the linear regression model. So let's go back to the Data tab and go to the Data Analysis, select Regression. It's already selected. Click OK. We need to update our ranges here. So our Y range will just be the salary column. And then in our X range, where we have all of these X's adjacent, years of experience, female, bachelor's, master's, and PhD, Control-Shift-Down arrow to select the entire range. Check the labels box because we do have labels. And then I will call this tab Multiple Regression because it's such an original name. And we will click OK. So now we get this model here. So we have our R squared went up from before, so that means that this model is explaining more, about 5% more of the variation compared to just the years of experience and gender that we had before. We have our intercepts have changed. So we have this, our reference group is high school. So this would be the expected salary of someone with a high school education as their highest level of education, and if they are male. And the reason why if they're male is because we have female down here. So we would have to add them both together, and it would subtract this, 54-14 for the gender gap here in this specific data set, which is just one company, not a huge amount. And this is this data set includes very overall highly educated people too, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so for bachelor's degree, this would be the value that the bachelor's degree adds to your salary above this, and then we also have years of experience in female to add. So if we were a male and we had a bachelor's degree, now our salary is closer to $65,000, and that's if we have no years of experience. Suppose we have one more year of experience, then we would be looking at more like $71,000. So that's kind of how we can interpret that. But additionally, it lets us see the difference between the high school and bachelor's, like we just saw, which is pretty large, $37,000. But then we see those marginal returns for higher education. So it's only about $11,000 higher between the bachelor's and the master's, and then it's about $10,000 higher between the master's and the PhD. So I hope this video was helpful. Have a good one.